Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Monday, November 18th. We are back. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris here with you. On this episode, we have an update on Roki Sasaki. Roki Sasaki is coming to Major League Baseball for the 2025 season. We'll discuss the possibilities of where he might end up. And now that we know he is coming stateside, we'll figure out where he should rank among pitchers, at least in this window where we don't know his team. We're going to talk about some takeaways from the Arizona Fall League. That league wrapped up over the weekend. We're on role change watch, as we are every winter now, looking for pitchers who might make the move from the bullpen to the rotation. There's one in Minnesota that Eno previously wrote about that might be making that adjustment. We had a surprise shoulder surgery. Not me, not Eno, Zach Neto. We'll talk about the implications of that and a few other news items to get to over the course of this hour or so. Eno, how was your week off?
Strange. It was very strange to not see you every day.
I set up my microphone at the dining room table and just did a dry run by myself, just so I wouldn't get rusty.
Your child eating his breakfast.
Yeah. And
what's
here's
the barrel rate
on
that?
Yeah, it was impressive. No, so the highlight of the week, I think, and this tells you how boring the week was for me and how strange it was my Instagram feed recommended Elmo singing a System of a Down song. And that was probably the best thing I saw over the past week. It was incredible.
Oh my God. I started watching Fallout, which my child came into the room and was like, this is a video game. And I was like immediately embarrassed, but I think it's won like Emmys and stuff. And I don't know. I thought it was all right.
This is a video game. So yeah, I'm glad to be back. Glad to be doing the pod again with you today because clearly I need this in my life as part of what I do on a week-to-week basis. We did get the news. Roki Sasaki is coming to Major League Baseball. I've seen a bunch of reports, including one from Ben Badler at Baseball America, writing about the timing of when Sasaki is likely to sign. It's likely to be after January 15th, which could put a pretty major hold, at least on the top end of the starting pitching market, because teams are going to build their plans around either having Sasaki or not having Sasaki.
That's true, but on the other hand, he's not going to cost a lot of money out of the current free agent budget, you know? So it's not the same as a Yamamoto where you'd be like, well, I don't want to sign Snell and Yamamoto. That's, $60 million out of my budget next year, which I don't really have. It's more like, you could make a plan. You're right, though. You still think of your team as, do I have 5 starters and, that sort of stuff. So, I think you're right that could put a hold on things. Pitching, on the other hand, pitching was, from Blake Snell, there's probably some movement to like sign these guys to get them into camp and not sign them like a day or two before the season starts. That did not work out well for Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell. So, so maybe we'll just have a lot of movement in the pitching market between January 15th and February 15th. Like that could be good. One way that we're thinking about this, where is he going to go? And he's in more of the position of Shohei Ohtani, right? Where he's fielding pitches, and the pitches may have something to do with, what culture in that city looks like and where they might feel comfortable living, proximity to Japan, other Japanese players. And so it's a little bit weird when people are like, oh, he really likes Yu Darvish, he might sign with the Padres. Some part of me is like, he's just going to go where the most money is. But the most money, is just, there's a cap. And I think what will happen is the reason he's waiting until January 15th is that's when the new money rolls in.
Right.
For signing international free agents. And so I think that everybody will have the same number for him. It'll be 3 or 4 million or something. I did see something where maybe some teams have 500,000 to $1 million more. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but if you're talking about the Padres and Dodgers, they are among the teams that have the most money. And so therefore, I do think it might come down to something like that. And he apparently idolizes Yu Darvish, even more than Shohei Ohtani. Yu Darvish is a legend in the game among players as just being a total pitching savant and being something that you can learn off of. Almost everybody who's played with Yu Darvish has learned something from him, and so that would be a pretty good landing point for him, Roki Sasaki. I think that it's hard to know that. I don't think he's going to go somewhere that's going to really negatively impact him as a pitcher. If he goes to the Dodgers, he wins more games, maybe gives up a few more homers in terms of park factors. I think going to Yankee Stadium would put a little pressure on him, gets a little bit offensive friendly there. But I think generally the teams that are interested in him are not the Cincinnati Reds and the Colorado Rockies. I doubt he's going to go to those places.
What an upset if that's what Sasaki chose. Like, I just really like mountains. I want to live in Colorado.
Right.
So I did see there's a breakdown. MLB.com had a breakdown of international bonus pools for the 2025 signing period. So if you were to wait, sign after January 15th, which again seems like the more likely outcome, there are 8 teams in the top group with $7.5 million in their pool. Reds,
there it is.
Tigers, Marlins, Brewers, Twins, A's, Mariners, Rays. One of the things I see in a lot of the write-ups,
and Rays are dark horses there because they
Mariners,
have the
Rays,
most money.
Brewers,
Yeah.
The reason being is pitching development is part of this, right? If you are choosing where you're going to go and maxing out money is not the number one goal, then you're kind of choosing based on other factors. And I would say of those teams in that top group, those 3 are the 3 that have the best pitching development. Twins aren't bad. Tigers aren't bad either. So you have options there. Next tier down is Arizona, Baltimore, Cleveland, Colorado, Kansas City, Pittsburgh. I mean, nothing's impossible, but I don't think I've seen anyone link Sasaki to any of those 6 teams to this point. And then you go all the way to the bottom. That's what the Dodgers are. But if it's not about every dollar, if it's about going to the right place and then being able to just rake in endorsement deals, then the Dodgers are still just fine for that, right? So that's why I think you see Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, you see those big market teams over and over and over again for players like this. But if there's going to be a surprise, it's going to be an organization that has historically done very well developing pitching that could swoop in. Atlanta would also be part of that conversation as well. They're in the middle group with a $6.2 million bonus pool for the 2025 period.
I think this is just one like 2003 to 2004. But Stephen Brown, SR Brown 70 on Blue Sky, he has a post up where he shows which teams affected the quality of their stuff the most in a positive manner. Milwaukee, number 1, Yankees, number 2, Rays, number 3, Minnesota in the top there, and the Padres in the top there. Arizona up there. Miami just hired Bill Hazel from Driveline and Anaheim to be their director of pitching, and they are in the top, sort of 10, along with Baltimore and the Cubs at the bottom of the top 10. So, that could literally be something his agent is looking at and telling him. The team that was surprising on this graph that didn't do well, Dodgers second worst at improving stuff of incoming pitchers. Braves bottom 5. Little surprised by that, and I wonder, there are some park factors at play. And then I do think this is just 1 year, so you could be the Dodgers and be good at this, and just 1 year the guys came in and were hurt or whatever it was, and it didn't work. Whatever, it doesn't mean that you're terrible at it. So it's just a little snapshot into it, but that's something that might matter. So Milwaukee, Tampa, San Diego, I think those are, everyone's saying it's the Dodgers is all I'm saying. Everyone's saying it's the Dodgers. Roki Sasaki's going to the Dodgers, but if he doesn't, it could be the Brewers, the Padres, or the Rays. The Rays would be a coup. That would be crazy.
Well, hey, we got some stuff on the Rays a little bit later in the show that might be relevant to this conversation as well. But I want to keep the focus on Sasaki from a fantasy perspective because there are people drafting right now. I get notifications every day that drafts over at the NFBC are about to fill. It's draft and hold and gladiator format. No in-season pickups. So the players you get now are the players you have all year. The difference in the formats being draft and hold 50 rounds, gladiator just 23 rounds, no benches. So
we're going to do like a little bit of a thing on that on Friday, right?
Big deep dive on how to play that format, what makes it unique, best ways to attack it. So when we talk about an average draft position, early fantasy value, we're focusing a lot on those leagues right now because they are sort of the beginning of the 2025 draft season. Now, when we talked about Sasaki on our last episode, one thing I said was that because of the stuff coming down in 2024, I didn't see the same stuff on the level of like a Paul Skeens, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas like when we saw Sasaki in the last World Baseball Classic,
that was Skeens-esque.
That was
100
top of the like first or second round fantasy pitcher if the innings are there. That was what I saw. Based on what we were talking about in our last episode, that ceiling is there if the stuff comes back because the performance in NPB has been better by K minus BB percentage than anyone who's come over so far. That goes all the way back to Darvish in his time in Japan, right? So it's standout electric stuff and it's a huge if it's back to the pre-2024 levels. And then the other thing that needs to be part of the conversation with Sasaki, given his age, especially some of the injuries he's dealt with, workload management is going to be a big part of this. Like the health grade is not an A. This is not a guy that's avoided injuries and has just been slowly building up. It's a guy that's actually missed a lot of time. In 24, he threw 111 innings. In 23, he threw 91. In 22, it was 129 and a third. And in 2021, he was only 19 years old. It was 83 and a third. So, we have this temporary concern about, was an injury the reason why the stuff was ticking down, or was it some kind of adjustment he made to possibly keep himself healthier? We don't know for sure, but based on the factors we have right now, where do you rank him? I mean, Skeens is the first pitcher off the board. We've talked about that a little bit this fall. He goes in the first round. Tarek Skubal goes in the first round. Zach Wheeler, Logan Gilbert, they go inside the first 2 rounds. And Corbin Burns, George Kirby, Chris Sale tend to be inside the top 40 overall. I don't think either one of us wants to go anywhere near that price range for Sasaki, especially not knowing where he's playing and where the stuff's at. But once you start getting down,
or Sale, honestly, and
Sale,
in a sort of related manner, it's like, when they're great, they're great. But I'm not picking a non-A health grade that high. And if you notice, the guys that you first mentioned, the first 5 or 6, I think are all A health grades.
The only one I think I would push back on would be Skubal. Skubal probably doesn't have an A health grade. I think he's in the critical second year of, if he can stay healthy in 25, his health grade going forward could flip to an A. We talked about this with Pablo Lopez.
Wheeler too. Wheeler had issues, and then he didn't.
Eventually, you can put together enough of a healthy track record to put some injuries in the past and have that A health grade. So I don't think Skubal has it right now. I would say Skeens, unless you're heavily weighting how hard he throws against him, but based on like past injuries, like there basically are none.
Yeah,
he would get an A health grade. Wheeler would get one. Gilbert would get one. Burns would get one. Kirby would get one. And then, Sale, DeGrom, no. Garrett Crochet's after that, no.
I'm looking, and we'll talk about this when we talk about strategy, but I'm looking to get one of those other ones, or I'm looking to not participate in the next group. I don't like that next group. We've talked about this, and Tyler Glasnow, and like it can work out, but Sasaki belongs in that second group.
Okay, so the second group,
in the injury risk ace upside group. Okay. I would put him behind Yamamoto. Where did you say he's going? Like 8th or 9th, 10th?
He's a little bit lower right now. He's 51st in November ADP. So that's a good start for the Would You Rathers.
51st among pitchers.
51st overall. So that's like among starters, that's like 11th or 12th.
Yeah. So I put Roki behind him because Yamamoto has shown us that his stuff will port over and that he can get results in the major leagues, which we think Roki can do, but Yamamoto's done it. So I'm going to take that. And also, they're both injury innings risks, so it seems about right. If you want to put Roki just ahead of Yamamoto because you think his stuff could be better, which is true, then do that. That's fine. But I think that's where he belongs, in that sort of DeGrom-ish, Sale-ish, that group.
Okay. In that DeGrom Sale group, that tier probably runs as far down as Garrett Cole, who has the up arrow coming off of the postseason and pitching deep into games and generally looking more like himself as the season rolled along. Yeah, so the toss-ups would be like Cole Reagans versus Roki Sasaki. Cole Reagans is going firmly inside the top 50 overall right now. How do you feel about that versus Sasaki?
Cole was losing velocity over the course of the season and is a 2 TJ guy. I'm taking Cole Reagans. But the way that this will go down, though, is that we will get more information as we go along. So a little bit of the way I'm thinking about this right now is that I want innings. So much so right now. Mm-hmm. As the spring goes along and we start getting some information, Roki's sitting 98 again. He's sitting 99 again. Then I'll be like, okay, well, he looks pretty good, and he could move up. But for now, he's behind Reagans, because if you ask me which one of these guys is going to throw 150 innings next year, I would say Cole Reagans.
How about this one? The next player after Yamamoto, Blake Snell. Also, don't know where he's pitching in 2025. Has a pretty lengthy history of injury problems, variety of different parts that he's hurt, but really good when he's on, and has 2 Cy Youngs already to his name. Like, similar to the Yamamoto argument you made, we know the stuff works against big league hitters. It's been working for years. How do you stack those two guys up? Because I think their workload projections would actually be pretty similar.
Yeah. I don't know. I will take maybe Roki over Blake, because I feel like Blake oscillates between 180 and 120. It could be Cy Young season. Roki could be really special, though.
Okay, fair enough.
No, that didn't feel right. I'm taking Snell.
I waffled already. Okay.
Well, because 120 innings from Roki next year might be a good outcome. I mean, it would be more than he's done, right?
It would be...
He had a 129 once.
Yeah, he had a 129 a third in 2022.
Once. You know what I mean? Like, 120 would be like a middle-of-the-road outcome for Roki next year. Whereas 120 for Blake Snell is actually the lower end for him.
Yeah, probably. I think that's fair. I mean, 150 probably seems like your upper bound regular season limit for Roki, whether it's the Dodgers or not. Mm-hmm. I could see teams accommodating him by having a 6-man rotation and saying, you know what,
Snell
we want
to be advocating for more playing time. More, he wants to go deeper into games. He wants more innings. That's been his stance.
Yeah, and his year-over-year workloads there. Every time you look at him, you're like, man, if he could just put a few full seasons together, I think the way we talk about Blake Snell would be completely different. I think you and I are both on Cole being a little underpriced right now, so I imagine it's not much of a question, Cole versus Sasaki. We would both take Cole. Pablo Lopez, coming off of a disappointing first half in particular. I mean, another generally healthy season. How does he stack up to Roki Sasaki right now?
Yeah, he's a tough one because the stuff models don't really love him. They could be missing something on his changeup. He does have a wide arsenal. He has good command. You're starting to see the home runs go up for Pablo Lopez. And that fits the stuff model. That's when we come out with this new stuff model, and I'm sorry that it's done. It's just we have to clean it up and do all the stuff, We're going to have expected home run rates. And I think what we'll find is that Pablo Lopez is pretty good, but he has a high expected home run rate. And so I'm going to take Sasaki over him because I'm just worried that, if you get 185 innings of a 4.08 ERA like you did out of Pablo Lopez last year, you're still going to get a lot of value in a 1.19 whip, but it could be ballast in certain points in certain leagues. If you're in like a 10 or 12 team league, like the averages in those categories are lower than that. Right? Mm-hmm. You don't want a 4.08 ERA. You don't want 185 innings of a 4.08 ERA. So if he's vanilla again next year, Pablo Lopez, then I'd rather take the shot at Roki Sasaki's potential brilliance.
Okay. This will conclude the would you rather. The last couple names that I put on the rundown are guys that go around pick 65, pick 70. Would you put any of Framber Valdez, Michael King, Luis Castillo, or Shota Imanaga ahead of Roki Sasaki?
No. I think there's workload issues among all of them. I think Sasaki, even at 90, he's dropped down to 97 from like the 100 we saw at WBC. I think even at 97, he's going to have better stuff than most of those guys. So if Sasaki has better stuff and the workload are issues, you might say, well, Michael King, no workload. Come on.
Yeah, he's got
workload issues. So once you start putting him in a group where most of the guys have workload issues or stuff question marks, then I'll take Sasaki.
All right. So that effectively makes Roki Sasaki at the present time in these soft rankings Eno's SP 15 right now. I'm on board with that. I think at that price, I'd be interested in him. I think there's going to be some people chasing the hype and pushing him earlier than that. So I may end up with very limited opportunities of having Sasaki on teams. Maybe keeper in dynasty leagues, though. That could be kind of fun too.
Be way more aggressive in keeper in dynasties. Because if it didn't work out the first year, maybe he has surgery, whatever it is, there's going to be a year in there where he wins the Cy Young. That's how I feel about him.
Okay, so you do see a future top 5 starter, assuming that stuff will come back, given how young he is. Okay,
right. Yeah, it's more about the potential innings risk than anything when it comes to being more conservative with him in the short term. But yeah, in a long-term keeper league, he's one of the most exciting arms there is.
All right. Well, until we get more news on Roki Sasaki, that will probably be the last time we talk about him for the next few weeks, which, hey, 21 minutes on Roki Sasaki is a great way to start off the show in November. Speaking of innings risk, Andrew Painter is back. He is healthy again, was pitching in the fall league, touched 99 with his fastball during his 6th and final Arizona Fall League start. Saw that he actually won Fall League Pitcher of the Year honors. You want to see a league that has a lot of awards? The Arizona Fall League has a lot of awards. Yeah. I love it. I'm here for it. Give these guys trophies. Give these guys money for going out there and playing because it's fun to watch them. The ADP range on Painter right now, earliest pick 246, latest pick 340. Role is probably more just a function of how they structure his innings. I think the Phillies pretty clearly see and value Andrew Painter as an important part of their rotation, but getting him through 2025 is the question. So if we're assuming a price that stays somewhere around pick 200 or a little after, what is your interest level in Andrew Painter based on the stuff he was showing us in Arizona?
He's an exciting young pitcher. I think I'd give him about 100 innings this year total, maybe 120. He managed around 100 the last time in 2022. It's the last time he pitched. But, using that as a high watermark, 120, of which maybe 20 are in the minor leagues as he sort of tries to stretch out, or maybe they leave him in the minors to begin the season and bring him up, a month into the season, something like that. Skip some starts. That's going to make him hard to draft in a lot of formats. And again, it's excitement for this guy long term, like Roki Sasaki, in terms of if it all works out and the stuff is good and the stuff is good, then there's real excitement about what he could be. But in terms of what he will do this season, if you're in a redraft league and you're just considering this season, I think it'll be a little bit difficult to draft him in formats where you have like free agency and you've got Andrew Painter in the minor leagues on your bench and you have stuff you need to do with your team. I think that'll be difficult. But in a draft and hold, you're buying 100 innings at some point in the season. You're hoping to get 80 to 100 innings in the major league at some point in the season. That's where he's going. So I like the price where he's going. I like taking him where he's going. I like taking pitchers like him that are 6 starters with great stuff that will get used at some point in the season, in the coming season. So that's I like where he's at right now. I would take him where he's at right now.
Yeah, I think you just have to be careful with pitchers like this when you're in that draft and hold situation, making sure you don't end up with too many workload restriction guys, but I think the quality of the innings
he's going
should be high
among
enough.
those guys.
Yeah, like he's being treated similar to other guys with workload issues.
Do you have anybody around him?
Oh, what do we got here? Let's see. If you stack them, okay, workload issue pitchers near him.
Or just any pitchers near him.
Bayo. So it's guys like this. So here, Kumar Rocker goes around the same time.
Okay, I think I'd take Kumar Rocker.
David Festa.
I think I'd take David Festa.
Okay, they both go a little earlier. Brian Bayo, no workload concerns, just how good is he concerns.
So I'm taking Brian Bayo because that's like 160 to 180 major league innings.
Brady Singer.
So now you're saying there's like sort of a quality quantity toggle that's happening.
Right.
I still think I'm taking Singer here because what happens is in these leagues is you would love to have like Singer and Bayo for the last spot on your roster, like the starting pitchers, so that like you could play Singer at home and Bayo on the road. You know what I mean? Like that's better than like waiting around for Painter. So yes, still taking the established guys here at this point.
Okay. Similarly, not far behind too, you could see Jesus Luzardo and Bobby Miller coming off the board a little after Painter. Like that's, I think both of those guys are on the. They're in the. That's a group where it's like I like a lot of pitchers in that group. I don't know if I'd want all of them on the same.
Yeah,
roster.
you can only have one of them. So I think that you could actually circle a group that is Painter and Bobby Miller, and I'm sure there's another name like that where there's injury concerns, there's stuff upside, they probably have a role, and I'd want one of them.
Okay. Fair enough. So
if you could circle 3 or 4 of them, then you don't have to pay the freight. You know what I mean? You can circle 3 or 4 of them and be like, I want one of these guys, and then you wait to see where the room sets them. And the first guy that goes in that group, you go, okay, maybe this round is the round to take one of those 4, and then you hope that all 4 of them don't go before your turn.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect there to be a wildly different price on that group over the course of draft season, and health could change any of them.
For Painter, I don't want to reach for Bobby Miller. I mean, after he burnt me so solidly, I'm not reaching for him. But if he falls in this group of exciting young arms that don't have a lot of innings in them, then I will take one of them.
Okay. A few other fall league notes. Josue Briceño from the Tigers organization was the fall league MVP. I think their 9th ranked prospect according to Pipeline. Only 20 years old. He actually won the Triple Crown, which the fall league, as people may know, it's a hitter-friendly environment. The quality of the pitching is also generally low. You have a lot of guys with command issues. So the stuff that you're going to see out there is, I think we did a stuff leaderboard from the fall league last year during our live podcast. There's not a lot of stuff that looks like major league pitching out there. No. But Briceño is a prospect who is actually relatively young for the fall league. And I think as someone that didn't really get to play much in 2024 due to injury, kind of put himself on the map. He's shown good plate skills in the past, showed a little bit of power on the complex in 23. I'm kind of curious just to follow what happens for him in 2025. At the very least, in deep dynasty leagues, he's on my radar now, whereas before the fall league, he wasn't.
Yeah. I like the combination of walk and strikeout rates. Real nice contact rates, good patience. I think the question is how much power comes with that, and we just don't really have a lot of access to the underlying power metrics. And even if his barrel rate was pretty good in the AFL or his hard hit rate or something, that would be a pretty small sample. The AFL is not a long league. So I would just treat him a little bit as one of these kind of like A-ball risers. Somebody who's past the complex league, so at least you're not really going flying blind when you're picking him up. There's all sorts of complex league guys whose numbers just look bonkers, and then they don't make that leap. It looks like he's making that leap. So those are the things I like about him. The one thing that I wonder about, do you know what position he's playing down there?
I didn't see where he was playing down there. Like in general, if he's moving around, we can look it up on BREF real quick. But what is his long-term position? The way the Tigers have used him, he shares time between catcher and first base as a teenager.
And he came over, so they have him listed as a first baseman.
He only played first base in the fall league, but that could be just the result of other teams sending guys they had to have catching too.
Right. I just bring this up also because there was another player that came over, Tyron Liranzo, who is like in the same position. I mean, the Dodgers caught him this year 44 times, and they played him at first base this year 24 times. And at DH, another 6. So, like, yeah, they've got another guy. So this is going to come down to, like, scouting stuff that I'm not good at, which is which one of these guys is going to be the catcher? And which one of these guys has to hit so well that they can be a first baseman? And, you know, Lorenzo has a little bit more of the traditional catcher package where he's striking out 26% of the time, walking 15% of the time, and slugging a lot. And he could be the kind of guy who comes up and hits 210 with, 22 homers, something maybe similar to what Jake Rogers does, right? I'm not looking at his page right now, but something like low batting average, high strikeout rate, high power. Lorenzo could do that. If he's the better catcher, then he'll be the catcher, and he does that. Whereas, maybe Briceño has a better upside in terms of a batter. So maybe he could supplant Torkelson?
Eventually.
Torkelson to DH?
It's a little ways away.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, he's going to play at AA this year. They don't put people in the AFL that are years away.
Generally, no. Like, the level assignment for this year, again, he didn't move up because he was hurt. There's a good chance he would have played at high A in the regular season if he was healthy. So, yeah, if they like what they saw, believe he's ready, they can aggressively promote him. Sure.
I think he's going to hit AA this year. And if he hits AA and they decide, you know what, you're not a catcher, we need you up as a bat, then he could be really close to the big leagues. So I don't know. There's a lot to know coming forward. And there's not a lot of information gained from an AFL MVP. I mean, no. This particular season, I even got texts from people who work in baseball. I got a text from an analytics guy that he said, have you looked into how bad the pitching has been in the AFL? And he was at games where the one club had sent complex guys over.
Like they were out of pitchers, they had injuries or something?
Yeah. So, and he was saying, what can we do to fix it? And one idea was allow like minor league free agents to participate.
That could be interesting, yeah.
And if you remember, the 2 guys that we interviewed from the fall league, the pitchers, they were minor league free agents.
Right. Yeah. So you're saying before Danny Kerwin and Cooper Adams joined us from the Red Sox organization, they just signed
the next
before this
Cooper
year.
Adams play in there.
Free agent. Well. So free agent pitchers, basically guys that have either finished college or or out of high school, whatever.
Looking to jump on with somebody, and they would be really competitive, and teams might be more interested in sending scouts and stuff. Be like, hey, it's like a big throw day for a bunch of people.
Yeah, that could be part of a solution. I mean, there's pitchers coming up from all different places now, so it makes sense to have a showcase league environment. You get multiple looks at players that way too.
And then we would know a little bit more about Briceño. Like right now, we're like, Briceño murdered some people, but they were not good pitchers, probably.
I think it's just put him on the watch list. Could be a riser in that Tigers organization if he does well with the eventual bump to AA. Might be start of 2025, might be midway through 2025, but worth watching nonetheless. Did see Caleb Durbin putting up some pretty big stolen base numbers in the fall league.
There's some weird conversation here with the Yankees being like, we can let Torres go because we're really excited about Durbin. And I'm sorry, like this, he doesn't hit the ball hard, right? So he would just be kind of like just to be a person. Like, yeah, he could walk and put the ball in play, but like, I doubt he would be a league average bat. And if he is a league average bat, he would just be right at league average. And it wouldn't be something that the fans in New York would really love. It would be a guy who's like hitting 250, putting the ball in play, and, hitting 10 homers and stealing 20 bags over the course of the season. It'd be a deep league player in fantasy. If you think it's headed that way and you just want to have a third second baseman in a draft and hold, then maybe that's a good idea. But I don't think that should be a plan for the New York Yankees. It doesn't seem like a great plan.
I would look at Durbin more as one of your last picks in a 50-round league as opposed to someone you're excited about. I think it's like, hey, look, he had a nice year in the minors. He's been age appropriate or even old for the level where he's played. Like you said, 25% hard hit rate this year at AAA. Did pop 10 homers. And being in the Yankee system, of course, that's not PCL. So there's that. 29 for 32 as a base stealer in 82 games and was running wild in the fall league. Low K rates too. It could work, but it looks more like a utility profile. It looks like more like you said, hey, who's the next John Birdie? Like that could be.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good one. And what I also like about what I would also say is that if you're the Yankees, even if you are excited about him, you're the Yankees. You're going to sign Jorge Polanco to like a 1-10 or something. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to just be like, hey, Durbin, here you go. So that could be a plan for them. I don't mind that one so much.
I just like that you keep nudging Jorge Polanco onto rosters. He's like a position player version of Seth Lugo for you.
I think he'll be a good deal for somebody this year.
Yeah, I mean, get him out of Seattle. Like it's becoming kind of a running joke. It's like, well, once someone who was in Seattle is available, just take the chance. And maybe it actually does work because it's so hard to hit there. I did see Aaron Boone also give a quote. Chris Kirshner, Yankees writer for The Athletic, was on hand for it. About Jasson Dominguez, Boone said, I fully expect him to be a big part of what we do this coming year. I love manager speak this time of year. It's like, if you didn't expect that, like it's just an absolute nothing burger. But at the same time, it's like, if you weren't saying that, I'd be concerned. You're just saying the obvious thing that you should be saying because Alex Verdugo is a free agent and Dominguez shouldn't really spend more time in AAA at this point, right? He's already been there for, well, it's only been 53 games because of all the injuries, but I don't know. He doesn't look like a player that has much left to learn at that level. So this seemingly is the opportunity to start 2025. And I'm kind of excited about him because I think we're in another lull hype-wise with Jasson Dominguez, relatively speaking. Pick 150 is his November ADP. I'm okay with him at that price point as a high ceiling sort of player. Stephen Kwan, Lane Thomas.
Oh, over Lane Thomas easily.
Colton Cowser.
I mean, it's so funny how good the market is, dude. You're like, okay, yeah. Colton Cowser doesn't steal as many bags. I could see some growth from Colton Cowser though in another year. So I think I'm taking Cowser, but these are pretty appropriate would you rathers.
Yeah, I think if we get more news and a big spring from Dominguez, that price just evaporates quickly. So it's if you like him, get him now. One of those situations. One more. Jasson Dominguez versus Dylan Cruz for 2025 only.
I'm taking Dominguez.
You've never really liked Dylan Cruz as much as the masses have liked Dylan Cruz.
Yeah. It's just a wildly oscillating pull rate that I'm waiting for it all to click, and I don't know how long it'll take with Dylan Cruz. But the speed is legit. He stole 12 bags in 132 plate appearances last year. It's not bad.
I think it's much more speed than I expected from Dylan Cruz's profile.
But I would take Jasson Dominguez's power over Dylan Cruz's.
You know, it's fun though. Like Dominguez, we've been talking about him forever because he was such a highly regarded international free agent signing when the Yankees
like we've been
got
talking
him.
About Cruz forever too.
A little bit because he was putting up video game numbers at LSU, and even before he was drafted, I think fantasy people were excited about him. Now, Dominguez is still younger than Dylan Cruz.
Yeah, college it'll do that to you.
Yeah, Dominguez doesn't turn 22 until February, so. Perspective as far as like the relative, he hasn't done it yet. Well, he's still very young and he lost time to injury and it just seems like it's all close to clicking for Dominguez. Let's get to some other stuff going on around baseball. The Twins are considering moving Griffin Jax to the rotation. You wrote about this, I think, after we were talking about Jeff Hoffman getting some interest in free agency as a possible starter. Jax was in the piece that you wrote, looking at some guys that have the traits that we would look for and someone that could make that sort of shift. And I think with the Twins in particular, they're in a funny spot where they're kind of up for sale and possibly just at an organizational crossroads where being frugal might be something they do even better than they've done in recent years. As a result of that, Jax to the rotation makes a lot of sense, even though we're getting good reports on Joe Ryan coming off of that shoulder, the Terry's injury that ended his season. You could look at Griffin Jax right now and say if they did make that switch on that depth chart, they've got Lopez, they've got Ryan, they've got Ober, and then Festa versus Jax, Zebby Matthews versus Jax. He could be just as good or better than the fourth and fifth starters currently on their depth chart.
Yeah, I mean, Fangraphs has Semyon Woods Richardson as 4 and Chris Paddock as 5. And, Louis Varland is still in the mix there at starting pitcher. And I've seen people say, well, they've got great pitching depth. Starting pitching depth? Why would they move Griffin Jax? And I think it's that, well, if you've got great starting pitcher depth, but you think Jax could be a better starter than those other guys, then great starting pitcher depth is bullpen depth. You know what I mean? Like, you can move Paddock back to the bullpen. Do you remember Paddock actually looked pretty good in the bullpen?
I kind of think that's the role for Chris Paddock. I think the arsenal's not really that deep, and
it's not a wide arsenal. Yeah,
it's a little bit Luke Weavery for me, where it's like, hey, you've tried it as a starter a couple times, and other than that, rookie year, massive success, nothing's come quite close to that. More recently, it's been bloated ratios, but out of the pen might work really well.
And Woods Richardson does not have ideal fastball shape, and is coming off for his career, Woods Richardson has a 20% strikeout rate and is projected for a 19% strikeout rate. So even though he had an okay season last year, most models say he won't be a great starter and would be a mediocre back-end starter, not even an average back-end starter. Well, what happens if you put him in the pen and he's 95? Does he get past all those shape issues on his fastball? So, yeah, I think the question is, you throw Griffin Jax in the spring in multiple innings and you watch the radar gun. Because when he last started, he was 92 and didn't have the same ride on his fastball, didn't have the same arsenal, and was bad as a starter. Now he's 97 as a reliever. What the algebra equation is, what is he now as a starter? And I think you can figure that out pretty quickly, where you're 2 or 3 weeks into spring training and he's at that 3 or 4 inning mark, right? And then you see what the radar gun says, and if it says 92 again, maybe say, all right, well, Griffin, we've worked it out so that sometimes you can give us 2 innings out of the pen, and maybe that'll be great for us too. But it looks like you should stay in the pen. Your velo's dropping too much or whatever. So I think that it's worth a look. And you can turn any one of those guys. Louis Varland, I think, could be a really good guy in the pen. If they just give up on him starting, I think he could be a good guy in the pen because he's got a 2-pitch arsenal and he'd have a lot more velo out of the pen.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. It could be a simple swap right there, just making that adjustment. And you look at some of the other guys you wrote up, like Nate Pearson, Michael Kopech is a little more expensive than the others that were in the story as far as how the drafters are treating him, because there's the possibility that he's just a closer. Adrian Morejon is the big bargain, along with Bill Brisky, who we saw in a few different roles for the Tigers. When you look at this group, it's kind of a similar mindset, I think, to the limited inning starters like Painter, the guys that we know are going to be workload controlled as starters. You want to take a shot or two on this group, relatively speaking, all after pick 200, other than Kopech. Morejon costs almost nothing in draft and hold, going around pick 500. But you also don't want to go overboard. It seems like the sweet spot, though, tends to be more in the Jax Hoffman range, if only because they're good enough as relievers to close if they land in the right situation, or in Jax's case, if Johan Duran gets hurt, right? Like that would be the path for him to do that. Whereas, some of these guys that get kind of caught in between roles, they might be 7th inning guys if they're not starting.
Yeah, Pearson It's close. It's close. He has closer stuff, but Porter Hodge looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, if Porter Hodge is the only guy in that pen who has better stuff than you, then now we're talking Pearson is either the 8th inning guy that could close when Porter Hodge is hurt or whatever. So I think Pearson's a pretty good one.
I wonder if the Cubs, among their offseason moves, spending on the bullpen ends up being something they do, where they try to buy their way out of reliever woes a little bit.
Their pen has been bad.
Yeah. As much as I thought Hodge was interesting at the end of the year, and I've got him on a few keeper league teams, I'm not holding my breath expecting him to be their closer.
Alzolay's coming back too, and you'll be like, Pearson there. You could talk yourself into being like, pen will be better this year, even if we don't spend. But they're in a weird spot where it's not really obvious, where they can spend. Obviously they can get Juan Soto and upgrade, but like they kind of have representative guys at every position. So it's, the bullpen might be the one place where they could, we could actually spend $10 million there and have a much better player than we have at that spot.
What do you think about a 1-year deal with Ryan Presley?
His stuff was down. Whose stuff wasn't as down as far as you might expect? Kenley Jansen.
That sort of guy where it's like, we're contenders. We think he's good enough. He gives us the proven C closer. Let's let it happen. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, and then if it doesn't work out, Porter Hodge is the closer at the end of the year.
Let's talk about Zach Neto. I mentioned an injury up top. This is the surprising shoulder surgery. Not a complete shock if you had him on your team and noticed at the end of the season that he wasn't playing those last few days. But at the same time, if you didn't have him and didn't notice that he missed those games, this came out of relative nowhere. Perry Minasian revealing late last week it was right shoulder surgery, just throwing arm. And I could, right? He didn't, at least in the initial reports, I was checking with Sam Blum from The Athletic about this. They didn't specify the exact nature of the surgery, but if he could miss the start of the season and he had the surgery in November, that tells me that it probably is something with the labrum or something pretty significant, because that's like almost a 6-month recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. They don't have all the details on it. That I think labrum repair would have some ramifications for what we consider kind of burdening power for Neto. And so if you downgrade his power upside going into next season, and then you downgrade his playing time, and then do you downgrade how often he runs, if he doesn't want to re-injure that shoulder. I mean, we saw kind of Ohtani limping around with that shoulder out there. He wasn't going to steal a base, So this is a significant downgrade for Neto. He's going to drop. I don't know that he's a top 12 shortstop for me.
He easily would have been before the injury, but I think this is like kind of a Matt McClain situation for me, where it's like, all right, we're already talking about opening day being a problem, but setbacks happen. Sometimes these injuries just take longer to heal than expected. If you come back too quickly, how much does it impact your power? How much does it hold you back on the base paths? A lot of performance questions, even if things go well on the timetable. So Neto goes from a player that I wanted to have on as many teams as possible to guy that I'm probably just veering away from, unless I'm in a situation where I've got IL spots or we're talking about just a massive discount.
Steamer projections with the auction calculator put Zach Neto at 16th right now with a 571 plate appearances. I do believe that 571 plate appearances is attainable. However, we just talked about how you have to downgrade that Neto's power, and the projection system is not going to do that. The projection system doesn't have a little button where you can play is injured. You know what I mean? So I think it's even worse than that. So Anthony Volpe is right behind him. I'd rather have Anthony Volpe than Zach Neto right now. Xavier Edwards is 18th. I might actually rather have him than Neto. He's going to play all year. He's going to give you a batting average and stolen bases. Jeremy Pena is 19th. I think I'm taking Jeremy Pena over Zach Neto. So that pushes Zach Neto to 20th. When you put him 20th, you put him up against Tyler Fitzgerald, Willie Castro, Carlos Correa. Then I would say, well, Neto has more. upside than some of those guys. He's younger than some of those guys. Maybe he heals well, you know. So I guess Neto for me is around the 20th shortstop off the board going into the season.
In the post Neto playing time situation, it's some combination of Kevin Newman, at least based on who they have right now, Kevin Newman and Scott Kingery. Luis Rengifo could play shortstop, but I think he's playing second base based on the way the team's built right now. They're saying no guarantees to Anthony Rendon for playing time, which, you know, Rendon's injury history kind of just writes that for you. You don't even have to say that part out loud necessarily. But Scott Kingery is kind of a forgotten guy. And I was reading Michael Bauman's story about him over at Fangraphs, and good numbers at AAA the last 2 seasons. It's as far as power and speed goes, right? It wasn't like great by strikeout numbers and walk numbers. Hard hit rates were kind of okay.
WRC plus at 2023, 104 WRC plus this year. Yeah. This is for a 30-year-old at AAA. So
right. So it's more of this would be a good story if he had a second chapter in Anaheim and found playing time and actually was the player that the Phillies thought he was going to be 5 or so years ago now. Fantasy-wise, does a lot of things we're interested in, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to pop in an everyday role. I think it's more of a going to compete to be a bench guy, could get 300 or 400 plate appearances, could do kind of a low average, some power, some speed sort of thing in a role like that. That's sort of where I'm at with Kingery, even though I'm kind of rooting for him a little bit.
Kevin Newman's going to be the opening day shortstop.
Just all glove and like, hey, we know he can play a good shortstop, so we're just going to do that.
Yeah, 78 career WRC plus. That's about where you'd project Kingery, and then you have questions with Kingery where, you know, is he the glove that we want him to be? Whereas with Newman, you're like, you know, replacement level type shortstop.
How about the Angels? Very active this offseason. They're in the news all the time, though, right? They add Newman, add Kingery. They have the Neto injury, which is not the reason you want to be in the news. They signed Kyle Hendricks already. We talked about that last time out. Nico Cavadas got an award in the Fall League. I mean, they signed Travis d'Arnaud to a 2-year deal.
Travis d'Arnaud is so weird. I mean, I guess Logan O'Hoppe doesn't have great splits against lefties. And even if you do think Logan O'Hoppe is your stud catcher of the future, you know, he can have a wingman. You know, you can play O'Hoppe some at DH. And, you know, no catcher, you don't want any catcher out here, you know, having 650, 700 plate appearances. So I don't think that the Travis d'Arnaud thing is blocking O'Hoppe in any way. So I think all the deals that they've done, I kind of understand. I think are fine.
Yeah, it's a lot of patching holes, but yes,
none of them are exciting. But you know, Kyle Hendricks is in a group of pitchers that I think are worth $2 million, which is the sort of Martin Perez, Marco Gonzalez, like terrible stuff, but has gotten outs before and could throw 150 innings of, you know, 4.5 ERA for you. You know, that's probably worth $2 million. So they probably did a good job there. You know, Nico Cavadas, we talked about it. If you could put Nico Cavadas and Nolan Shanuel together somehow, if you could just squish them into each other, you'd have a real situation, an exciting situation at first base. As it is, you have one guy who can hit for power and can't hit the ball, and you have another guy who can hit the ball but can't hit for power.
I've got a Google alert set up for player squishing machine, and I have not received any new notifications since you last suggested the possibility. If I get one, though, I'll be sure to add it to the rundown.
I mean, on this one
we've been
team,
waiting for a long time.
Jorge Soler and Kevin Newman and squish them together, you might have a pretty good player.
Mickey Moniak and Joe Adell as one player would be a really good player. I mean,
that one would still strike out a lot.
It'd still be, but you could play him every day.
Yeah, right.
One roster spot. You know, that's the key. We did see Nick Martinez accept the qualifying offer from the Reds. Not a surprise. Talked about that a bit on our last episode. But how about this one? Grayson Rodriguez fully recovered from his lat strain. Love to hear that in November, and will have no restrictions this spring. So how are you feeling about Grayson Rodriguez at the outset of this draft season?
Slightly bad news for Grayson Rodriguez, though.
Come on.
They're changing Mount Baltimore.
Yeah, they overdid it.
They overdid it. They're bringing Mount Baltimore in a little bit, and they showed that last year Cole Irvin had 10 home runs taken away by Mount Baltimore.
That's a big impact on your results.
They announced they were changing the wall, and Cole Irvin said, "I'm leaving the country."
Is he in Japan or Korea?
Yeah. Second on that list was Dean Kramer with 8. I am downgrading Dean Kramer. I had him on a lot of type of Seth Lugo type lists where it's like, this guy's a wide arsenal and a nice park. I'm not so sure that the park will be as nice to him next year, and he's not really shown a put away pitch for me, Dean Kramer. So Grayson Rodriguez is the best pitcher of these 3, and he had, like, I forget what it was, 6 home runs or something. That it could be meaningful, it could not, because he's also such a good pitcher that, if he just starts putting the pieces together better and like understands the art of pitching a little bit more than the art of making stuff, then he could have a breakout season. It doesn't matter what Mount Baltimore's doing. So I'm excited about Grayson Rodriguez, and the price has gone down, I'm sure. Where do you have him right now?
Fringe top 100 overall, living in the same range as Joe Ryan, Tyler Glasnow, Jack Flaherty, and Zach Gallen.
Easily over Jack Flaherty. I think over Zach Gallen, actually. Yeah, I think I might have him over Zach Gallen. I think the only one where Tyler Glasnow, we're good. It's just we need more news. I don't know. Maybe Tyler Glasnow over him. Maybe Joe Ryan over him if the news is good.
I'm looking at the guys going
Grayson
earlier.
Rodriguez is the best of that whole group.
Grayson Rodriguez versus Tanner Bybee, who's going about 15 picks earlier on average. Would you do that?
I'll probably just wait and not take Bybee. And like if
Just
they
see
were
if
at
he
the same
falls.
spot, if they were the same spot, I might take Bybee. But
Okay. Well, then that gives us a good approximation. Same tier, just a matter of timing and getting that exactly the way you want it. But yeah, the grab bag had a few different things in it. The Orioles tweaking Mount Baltimore, so that's bad news for the pitchers, good news for the hitters, at least.
we have Charlie Morton news. Charlie Morton
Planning to pitch in 2025.
Hey.
One more year of Charlie Morton.
Around a little bit more.
Is there a Groundhog's Day sort of test for Charlie Morton where like you look out the window in November and you see something outside and it just means Charlie Morton's coming back for one more year?
Some teams should put him and Rich Hill on the mound together. Same
one person? The
Yes,
player smusher again?
No, they both. I mean, I guess it's a lefty and a righty curveball. I mean,
It'd be kind of fun if we had for a season a 31st team comprised only of players in the twilight of their career who all decide, I got one more year. I got one more.
the
And they
Birmingham old men.
just call me old men. I would get some other stadium news here. The Rays are going to play their home games at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa for 202025. They'd also host playoff games there too.
Some money off of that. So they got sort of a $10 million to.
Oh, that's the deal. They're going to use that extra $10 million. That's going to be the difference, and that's how they're going to get Juan Soto. So then, for years, Rays fans can be upset that
the Rays paid for Juan Soto.
That's the argument they'll make forever. I mean, it was the most logical fit just in terms of travel, stadium being in Tampa, and
the
trop
stadium
being
situation
damaged.
is part of why I think the Rays would be a real surprise for Roki Sasaki or any. I mean, there's gonna be people. Yeah, there's gonna be some. The Rays are interested in Juan Soto, and they're like offering him 1 year and $60 million or 1 year and $50 million or something, And I just can't imagine that any big free agent would take money from the Rays to play in a minor league park.
It's the same problem the A's are going to have, really, just in terms of like being a coveted free agent and choosing that situation. I would actually argue that the Sacramento situation is worse than the Tampa one. Mm-hmm. So I think it hurts the A's even more. Mm-hmm. In this case, I'm referring to the actions of John Fisher. But Steinbrenner Field for the Rays in 2025, since the repairs on the Trop, I think it'd be a matter of time and money too, with the new stadium coming. I don't know. Like even 2026 is a bit of a question right now, but we'll solve that one later.
We'll talk a little bit about this over the offseason, I'm sure, but I do think that the early returns are that this will be slightly better for hitters than pitchers moving from the Trop over, because what the Trop does is it makes your pitches better. Like there's a stuff plus power factor, and I think it's mostly dome related. So most of the domes, you can replicate your pitches just as if you were in the pitching lab, and so you get that you get that those high stuff pitches. I think that's a big source of the strikeout park factor in Tampa Bay. Maybe the lighting is a little bit part of it too, but the weirdest thing about Tampa has always been the strikeout to walk park factor, where it's the worst place in baseball if you're a hitter in terms of augmenting strikeouts and decreasing walks. So that's going to go away, and that's always helped Rays pitchers a little bit and hurt Rays hitters. So I would give a little bit of an up arrow to Rays hitters and a little bit of a down arrow to Rays pitchers. Somebody like Ryan Pepiot, I don't know that I care too much. But somebody like Zach Neto, I'm not that in on Zach Neto to begin with. And if he's not going to get that sort of augmentation, that home augmentation, I'm probably out on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think they all, to some degree, get it. I think we've talked about this a little bit with the Mariners. Some of the home road splits we've seen from even Gilbert and Kirby, Bryce Miller, you see much better results at home because of the batter's eye and different factors there. Same thing happens at Tampa Bay, where I think you're generally going to see nice home splits and slightly worse than expected road splits. But where do you draw the lines on this? I mean, yeah, if you trust Pepiot and maybe Boz and McClanahan, but you put Springs in the same bucket as them, or do you put Springs more in the Littell bucket where you say this might be more of a problem for him, or this might be more of a problem for Taj Bradley, who already has consistency struggles?
Yeah, at least with Taj Bradley, I can be like, yeah, the stuff is through the roof. But, Jeffrey Springs came back throwing 90. And you might say, well, it was the first year back from surgery and blah, blah, blah. But like, what we've found is that 3 starts after your return from surgery predicts the rest of your fastball velocity for the season at an amazingly good rate in terms of predictiveness. So we have 33 innings and 7 starts from Jeffrey Springs at a 90 mile per hour fastball velocity. So I'm a little suspicious of him next year. I know we did get some okay strikeout rate results with a 26% strikeout rate, but I think we are unlikely to get a low 3s ERA out of Jeffrey Springs next year.
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant to buy in on that as well, and I think they could make things really interesting just by having a few more options with high quality stuff once McClanahan's available again, especially like that bumps somebody. I like most of that rotation, but I do think you want to account for if this park factors change. I don't know if it's going to be like the Jays in Dunedin, if it's going to be quite like that, but I do want to see some park factors numbers on there, and knowing that K's get that elevation in the Trop. I think the 3-year rolling park factor for strikeouts is a 108. It's 4th highest in the big leagues right now, behind Seattle, Milwaukee, and Atlanta. That's the number that's probably going to take the biggest hit. And then we have to look at how much balls in play are going to be impacted too, right? We're going to have a homer boost. We're going to have a balls in play boost. All those are factors as you try and sort through this as well. But it definitely looks like it's going to hurt pitching. It's a question of how much. But on the flip side, you get a little boost on the bats.
Steamer projection for Junior Caminero is so sexy. 262 with a 29 homers. Lovely.
The 262 almost feels low. Like
that's the part that I think could be light, because they're projecting for a 22% strikeout rate, and he had some real nice low strikeout rates in the minors. And if his new park is at all conducive to making contact, then
yeah. One other update from the Rays before we go: Wander Franco now facing a firearm charge in the Dominican Republic, and that's just on top of the other case that is actually going to trial on December 12th. Charges include the sexual abuse, sexual exploitation against a minor, and human trafficking. Sentence could be up to 20 years on those charges. So maybe a resolution coming here in the next few weeks with that December 12th trial date on the horizon for Wander Franco.
There's so many things that we like know from this case. It'd just be amazing if he got acquitted. Like, it just
the amount of evidence that's been amassed in this one, like, it just seems like it's an obvious guilty, and I don't know. I don't know the Dominican legal system.
Cross that bridge if we get to it.
Yeah, it seems like a go away forever situation, and completely justifiable based on what we know in that case. But I don't know. Final details hopefully coming soon. as that one maybe gets resolved, or the trial gets pushed back again, because that's how stuff happens, right? It's just kind of annoying. Lots of ground covered today. If you enjoyed this show, take a moment, leave us a nice rating and review, and jump into the Discord. You can do that using the link in the show description. We'll be a little more active in there now that we're back from our week off. And let us know what you want to hear about in these next few weeks. Got a few ideas for shows, but send us some mailbag questions in there as well. We'll maybe put a few reverse mailbag questions in there in the next few weeks. That's where we ask you questions. We just want to hear what your answers are, because sometimes we just want to crowdsource some different things. So you can find us. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm just DVR on Blue Sky. Not my full name. You're still Eno Saris over on Blue Sky, right?
That's right.
The pod maybe will have an account there soon. Doesn't have one yet, so we'll get that set up.
It's pretty
shortly.
active over there. Baseball in particular, the baseball community has been active. It's been fun.
Yeah, I'm seeing posts from people I'm actually following, which is nice after years of not seeing that. So yeah. I'm enjoying that aspect of Blue Sky so far as well. So feel free to join us over there as well. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.